Hello, my name is Trevor Appler, and this is my demo for the mesh part of homework 8. Now, unfortunately, I've been having a lot of difficulty with the mesh, and so a lot of that I think is the limitation of points that I have. And I do have a lot of points on my point cloud. However, looking at successful videos online, they usually have like upwards of 9,000 points, and um, well, actually, and yeah, upwards of 9 million points, I believe. And so those meshes end up coming out really well, and so I actually haven't been able to find a very good successful mesh, but I've really put in a lot of time, and so I want to at least walk through the process of getting there. So to begin, I just need to open up my particular text file, and it's right here, and so I called it mesh, and so I'll change this to space because of the way that the text file is set up, and it separates x, y, and z values with spaces. And so you can see this right here is the point cloud. I really do like this software for the point cloud alone. A couple things I like about it is this point size, and then you can. I don't actually know what this does, but it changes the color to be a little brighter, so I can see it a little better. But to begin, according to the instructions, I have to start at show normal, and then moving on to these normals, curvatures, and orientations, and compute normals for point sets. I always start out with 10, and I'll explain why in a second, but if I start out with 10, then I'll move over to remeshing, simplification, and reconstruction, and go to the screen facade surface reconstruction. Now you can see that this point cloud, all the instructions say that all the lines should be should line up, and that's obviously not true with this point cloud. And so this definitely isn't the actual the 10 value that I use isn't the value that I want to use. But again, every time you do this Poisson surface reconstruction, it creates a new mesh, and so these end up all just stacking up. And so I realized that anytime I have a mesh I'm unhappy with, I have to manually delete it if I do it this way. But if I continue to change the other filter instead, then it keeps the same mesh, but it just modifies it. And I'll show you that in a second. So if I applied this, it'll take a moment especially because of the reconstruction depth is 8. But it looks kind of ugly, not gonna lie. And I definitely don't want to 3D print this. I don't know what that even looks like, but I'm gonna roll with that for now. And then moving over to the filters again, I found that 5400 is a number that works really well, where all the lines are heading in the direction that it appears they should be. And so you'll see that in a second. It takes a little while because of the 5400, which is an insanely large number, but it'll just take a minute. And then once that loads, the mesh should be a lot better, but still not completely workable. Okay, so you can see that the lines are all going straight out from where they should. And so I would imagine that Mesh would be able to, or that MeshLab would be able to recognize those lines a little better. But unfortunately, it hasn't been super successful. So it actually didn't come out the way that I was hoping it would. And it really is finicky as you put. But I'll try a couple more things. My point is, I haven't been able to have a successful render where I'm just really satisfied with the data that I have. There's always in fact the one time I got as close as I could to it, I haven't been able to replicate that, even though I've used the same values, which has really confused me. But an issue I've run into just is that this tool right here, the select faces in a rectangular region, whenever I try to use it, it doesn't do anything. And I haven't been able to figure out the problem, and I've uninstalled, I've reinstalled, but for some reason I'm not able to delete faces. And so that's a big difficulty and a big problem, because I don't, obviously this isn't a desirable mesh, and so it's really hard to figure out exactly what to do at this point. Right here, if you look at I'll just point out a couple features of the book house that I had. So right here, if you look at this, it's very rocky, it looks like, and it's not very flat or very straight. And a lot of that is because it's not perfectly aligned. So for the book house part, the more important features, in order for those to be aligned, for some reason there's some misalignment with this the stand that it's on. And also there are fewer points for it, it looks like, and so I believe there just isn't as much for MeshLab to work with, and so it keeps coming out as this. But anyway, so this is obviously not something that I'm super excited to print in the state that it is now. I can see what it looks like without the first mesh. Wow, that actually looks a lot better. It has a flat surface for the roof. It has somewhat flat of that side and somewhat flat this side, but there's still a lot of more work to be done. And I've seen that people have been able to successfully do it, but I've been running into just a lot of problems. And again, when you're not able to delete sides, um, then there's really not much that I can do. So anyways, I'm sorry that this is not a success video, but this is a walkthrough of the process I've been going through, again for hours on end, and with just about no success. But this is the process that, uh, as best as I was able to interpret, which instructions were very easy to follow along with, but the example mesh wasn't as intense. It was one side, so maybe it would be more successful if I take each of the 4 walls individually and then find a way to combine them in CAD or some other way. Maybe that would make it more successful for me and better match the results that are met in the instructions or in the appendix. But because of the complexity of this design, I expected it would be a lot more difficult than the one that was provided as an example. And so, but I just haven't, in all my messing around with MeshLab and watching YouTube videos, I just haven't been able to find a way to really succeed in getting a mesh that I'm really satisfied with. This isn't the only software I tried as well. Real quick, I tried the Cloud Compare, and that had its own difficulties. So I'll keep working on it, keep trying, because I think it would be really exciting to have a 3D printed model of the 3D point cloud that I've been able to generate with, and again, just going back to deleting the current mesh, I'm very satisfied with this point cloud. I'm very happy with it. Definitely it could use more points, and so I think that is the problem. I think it's the limitation that we only have like lines with like 1 degree gaps all the way up, and so the spacings I think are just too great for it to get a very clear idea of what the mesh should look like. So if I were to go over this several times, from like varying distances so that each of the angles are at different points, then I think I'd have a much more successful point cloud. But just given the data that I have, MeshLab just doesn't know what to do with it. And honestly, like looking at it, like this right here, a lot of it looks like X's, and honestly, I wouldn't know what to do with it if I didn't know what the whole design actually was. And so I don't know if I can chalk this up as a LiDAR problem, or certainly not a LiDAR problem, but a data problem that is really expected or reasonably encountered, but it's definitely something that I've come across that I haven't been able to really solve and push through quite yet, despite all the work that I've done in MeshLab. Anyways, I thank you for watching the video. I'm sorry it's not a grand success story like I believe my 3-point cloud was. I'm very proud of my point cloud, but I would really like to get this working, but we'll see. Anyways, again, thanks for watching, and I believe this is the last one before the final project presentation that I get uploaded. So